The morning sun streamed through the airport windows as travelers rushed about, each locked in their own world of schedules and destinations. Among them walked Andre Wilson, his calm demeanor masking the weight of responsibility he carried as the CEO of Next Level Tech, a company he had built from the ground up over 15 challenging years. Andre checked his watch and quickened his pace slightly. The industry conference in Chicago wouldn't wait, and the presentation he was scheduled to deliver tomorrow could open doors to international markets his team had been eyeing for months. His leather briefcase contained not just his laptop but the hopes of over 300 employees. Final boarding call for flight 372 to Chicago. The announcement echoed through the terminal. Andre joined the line at the gate, scrolling through emails on his phone. The night had been short. A last-minute crisis with a client had kept him up until 2 a.m., and his eyes felt heavy despite the 2 cups of coffee he'd already consumed. "Boarding pass and ID, please," the gate agent said with a practiced smile. Andre handed over his documents. The agent's eyes flicked from the ID to his face and back. There was that slight pause he'd grown used to over the years, the momentary disconnect between his executive status and his appearance. "Have a pleasant flight, Mr. Wilson," the agent said, handing back his items. The jetway was crowded with passengers struggling with carry-ons and searching for their seat numbers. Andre made his way to seat 4A, grateful he'd managed to secure a window seat in business class. At least he could lean against the wall if sleep finally caught up with him. As he approached his row, he noticed 2 flight attendants chatting near the galley. One of them, a woman with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, seemed tense, her gestures sharp as she spoke to her colleague. "I don't care what she says, I've been doing this job for 12 years. I know when someone's trying to get away with something," she was saying, not bothering to lower her voice. Andre slipped past them and found his seat. Stowing his briefcase under the seat in front and his small carry-on in the overhead bin, he settled in, already feeling the fatigue spreading through his body. Just as he was about to close his eyes, the flight attendant with the blonde hair appeared beside him. "Drink before takeoff?" she asked, her voice professional but lacking warmth. "Just water, please," Andre replied with a tired smile. She handed him a plastic cup without returning the smile and moved on to the next passenger. Andre took a sip and leaned back, hoping to catch a few minutes of rest before takeoff. The plane filled quickly, the usual symphony of shuffling feet, closing overhead bins, and muffled conversations. Andre felt himself drifting off when a commotion a few rows back caught his attention. "That won't fit, sir. You'll have to check it," the blonde flight attendant was saying, her voice rising slightly. "I've brought this same bag on dozens of flights," a man protested. "Well, not on my flight," she replied firmly. Andre watched as the man reluctantly handed over his bag, frustration evident on his face. The flight attendant, her name tag read Patricia, seemed to be having a difficult day, and it was only 9 a.m. Once everyone was seated, the plane pushed back from the gate. Andre listened absently to the safety demonstration, his mind already working through the points he wanted to emphasize in his presentation. Next Level's new security software had potential beyond anything currently on the market. But convincing old-school executives to invest wasn't going to be easy. After takeoff, as the seatbelt sign dinged off, Andre felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. He knew from experience that a short nap now would help him function better later. He reached up to turn off his reading light and noticed there was no pillow in his seat. When Patricia came by with the beverage cart, he caught her attention with a small wave. "Excuse me, could I possibly get a pillow?" he asked politely. Patricia glanced at him, her eyes quickly scanning his tailored suit and gold watch. "We're serving drinks right now," she replied curtly. "I'll see what we have available later." "Of course, thank you," Andre said, his voice calm despite the dismissive tone. After 20 years in business, he'd developed a thick skin for moments like these. The flight progressed smoothly for about 30 minutes. Andre managed to review some presentation notes despite his fatigue. When he noticed Patricia heading back toward the galley, he decided to try again for that pillow. He pressed the call button. A different flight attendant, a younger man with a friendly face, responded. "How can I help you, sir?" "I was wondering if I could get a pillow. I've got a big presentation tomorrow and could really use a bit of rest." "Absolutely. Let me grab one for you." The young man returned quickly with a pillow and a blanket. "Here you go, sir." "Can I get you anything else?" "This is perfect, thank you," Andre said with genuine appreciation. Just as the flight attendant walked away, the plane hit a patch of turbulence. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged on, and the captain's voice came over the intercom asking all passengers and crew to take their seats immediately. Andre secured his seatbelt and tucked the blanket around himself. But before he could settle in, he realized his presentation notes had slipped from his lap during the turbulence and were now partly under the seat in front of him. He unfastened his seatbelt just long enough to lean forward and retrieve them. As he straightened back up, the plane lurched again. Andre quickly reached for the overhead bin to steady himself, accidentally pressing his briefcase against the wall in the process. The latch popped open and several papers slipped out, floating down to the aisle. Patricia, who had been making her way back to her jump seat despite the turbulence, stumbled slightly as she stepped on one of the fallen papers. Her coffee tumbler, which she'd been carrying, tipped in her hand, splashing hot liquid on her uniform. "What the?" she exclaimed, looking down at the mess and then up at Andre with anger flashing in her eyes. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on. What do you think you're doing?" "I'm so sorry," Andre began, reaching to pick up his scattered papers. The turbulence, but Patricia wasn't listening. Whether it was the culmination of an already stressful day, the hot coffee on her uniform, or something deeper, her reaction was disproportionate to the situation. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you," she snapped, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Andre froze, the papers forgotten. The phrase "you people" hung in the air between them, its implication unmistakable. "I said I'm sorry about the papers," he replied evenly, working to keep his voice calm. "Let me help clean up." "Stay in your seat," Patricia ordered, and as Andre moved to sit back, she pushed his shoulder roughly. The cabin went quiet. Several passengers looked up from their books and screens, witnesses to what had just transpired. Andre took a deep breath. 20 years of navigating boardrooms and investor meetings had taught him that losing his composure would only make things worse, especially in situations like this. "I understand you're upset about the coffee," he said quietly, "but I don't think putting your hands on a passenger is appropriate." Patricia's face flushed. "Are you threatening me?" "I was just doing my job, keeping everyone safe during turbulence." "I'm not threatening anyone," Andre replied, his voice steady. "I'm simply stating a fact. Now, if you could please get your supervisor, I'd appreciate it." 2 rows back, a woman had her phone out, the camera subtly angled toward the confrontation. Across the aisle, a man in a business suit, who Andre didn't realize was actually Next Level's new marketing director traveling separately, watched with growing concern, recognition dawning in his eyes. Patricia seemed to suddenly realize they had an audience. Her expression shifted from anger to something more guarded. Without another word, she turned and walked briskly toward the front of the plane. Andre sat back, his heart beating faster than he wanted to admit. He'd faced subtle discrimination throughout his career, but direct confrontations like this were rare these days, especially in public settings. He pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, and quickly documented what had happened while it was fresh in his memory. A moment later, the head flight attendant, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, approached Andre's seat. "Sir, I understand there was some sort of incident. Would you mind telling me what happened?" Andre nodded, appreciating the professional tone. "I'd be happy to," he said, unaware that in just 10 minutes, this seemingly small confrontation would spiral into consequences none of them could have anticipated. The head flight attendant, who introduced himself as Thomas, listened carefully as Andre explained what had happened. His expression remained professional, though his eyes betrayed concern as the story unfolded. "Mr. Wilson, I want to apologize for your experience," Thomas said once Andre finished. "This is not how we train our staff to interact with passengers, and we take these matters very seriously." Andre nodded. "I appreciate that. I'm not looking to cause problems for anyone, but what happened wasn't acceptable." "I completely agree," Thomas replied. "Would you mind if I took down your contact information? Our customer relations team will want to follow up." As they spoke, Andre noticed several passengers watching the interaction. The woman with the phone was still recording discreetly, while another passenger typed rapidly on his laptop. Andre had been in business long enough to recognize when something was gaining momentum. Thomas handed Andre a complaint form. If you could fill this out at your convenience, it would help with our internal review process. Of course, Andre said, taking the form. He hadn't planned on making a formal complaint, but the situation had escalated beyond a simple misunderstanding. Thomas lowered his voice. Patricia has been removed from cabin service for the remainder of this flight. I'll be personally overseeing your section. Andre thanked him and settled back into his seat, the earlier fatigue now replaced by a strange alertness. He glanced at his phone, contemplating whether to text his assistant about what had happened, but decided against it. The conference was too important to let this incident distract his team. What Andre didn't know was that the distraction had already begun. The marketing director from Next Level, Raj Patel, had recognized his CEO immediately. He'd only been with the company for 3 months and had yet to meet Andre in person, but he'd studied the leadership team carefully. Now, watching this unfold, Raj felt a responsibility to act. He quietly sent a message to the company's communications director. Witnessing concerning incident on flight with AW, flight attendant made racially charged comment and physically pushed him, handling it with typical grace, but this could blow up. Video being taken by other passengers. 3 rows behind Raj, a travel blogger named Lily Chen had also recognized Andre Wilson. Though not as famous as some tech CEOs, Andre had been featured in several business magazines for his innovative approach to cybersecurity and his efforts to increase diversity in tech. Lily had actually cited his company in a recent blog post about corporations making real change. She'd captured the incident on her phone and was now debating what to do with the footage. Her travel blog had a modest following, but she also maintained active social media accounts with a combined reach of over 100,000 followers. As a woman of color herself, she felt an obligation to share what she'd witnessed. After a moment's hesitation, she opened Twitter and began typing, "Just witnessed appalling treatment of Andre Wilson, CEO on Flight 372. Flight attendant pushed him and made racist comment after he apologized for accidentally dropping papers. Video to follow. Airline official, what are you going to do about this?" She attached a short clip showing the most damning part of the interaction and hit send. Meanwhile, in the front of the plane, Patricia sat in the crew area, her face flushed with a mix of anger and growing concern. Thomas had pulled her aside immediately after speaking with Andre. "What were you thinking?" he had asked, his voice low but intense. "You know we never touch passengers, and what you said could easily be interpreted as discriminatory." He was out of his seat during turbulence. Patricia defended herself. "I was doing my job keeping everyone safe. By pushing him? By making comments about you people?" Thomas shook his head. "I've worked with you for years, Patricia. This isn't like you." Patricia stared at her hands. The truth was she'd been struggling lately. Her mother's health was declining. Her rent had increased again, and she'd been fighting with the airline about schedule changes that were disrupting her life. None of which excused her behavior, she knew that, but the pressure had been building for weeks. "I messed up," she admitted finally. "I've been having a rough time, and I took it out on him." "I'll apologize," Thomas sighed. "It's beyond that now. I need to file an incident report. And you're going to be on administrative leave when we land pending review. And I have to tell you, I saw at least 2 passengers recording what happened." Patricia's stomach dropped. "Recording? You mean like on their phones?" Thomas nodded grimly. "Welcome to flying in 2025, everything gets recorded." Back in the main cabin, Andre was trying to refocus on his presentation when his phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. "Are you okay? There's a video going viral of an incident on your flight. Communications team is monitoring, and the board chairman just called." Andre stared at the screen in disbelief. He opened Twitter, and there it was, Lily's post, already with hundreds of retweets and comments. The comments ranged from supportive to incendiary, with many calling for the flight attendant to be fired and others sharing their own experiences of discrimination on flights. His phone buzzed again, this time with a call from his company's head of communications. "Andre, are you all right?" Diane asked as soon as he answered. "I'm fine," he assured her, keeping his voice low. "There was an incident, but it's being handled." "How bad is it getting?" "It's picking up steam fast," Diane replied. The clip doesn't show the whole interaction, but what it does show is pretty damning. The airline's stock is already taking a hit and reporters are calling for comment. "The board wants to issue a statement supporting you, but we wanted to check what you're comfortable with first." Andre closed his eyes briefly. What had started as a simple request for a pillow was now threatening to overshadow the conference. The product launch, everything he'd been working toward. "Let's keep it simple," he said after a moment. "Confirm that there was an incident, that I'm cooperating with the airline's review process, and that Next Level stands firmly against discrimination of any kind. But please emphasize that I'd prefer the focus to remain on our upcoming security innovations rather than this unfortunate event." "Got it," Diane said. "And Andre? Everyone here has your back. This is exactly why your leadership matters so much." As Andre ended the call, he noticed Thomas approaching his seat again, looking even more concerned than before. "Mr. Wilson, I need to inform you that videos of the incident have appeared online," Thomas said quietly. "Our corporate office has been notified and wants to speak with you when we land. I've also just received word that Patricia and the rest of our crew will be meeting with management immediately upon arrival." Andre nodded. "I suspected as much when I started getting calls. Listen, Thomas, I want you to know that I understand the pressures of your job. I'm not out to ruin anyone's career, but I do expect accountability." Thomas looked relieved. "Thank you for your understanding. The captain has asked if you would be willing to speak with him briefly before we land. He'd like to personally apologize." As Thomas walked away, Andre's phone lit up with notifications. The story was spreading faster than he could have imagined. A news alert caught his eye. "Airline crew faces termination after CEO subjected to racist treatment mid-flight." He scrolled through his Twitter mentions, now numbering in the thousands. Among them was a tweet from a major civil rights organization. "We stand with Andre Wilson, CEO, and all who face discrimination. This incident highlights why we need continued vigilance against bias. Hold them accountable." The plane began its initial descent into Chicago. Andre looked out the window at the city skyline emerging through scattered clouds. He had come to deliver a presentation about the future of cybersecurity. Now he found himself at the center of a different conversation entirely. His phone buzzed with a text from Raj Patel, though Andre didn't yet know the sender was his new marketing director. "Sir, I'm on the flight, seat 12C, and witnessed everything. The entire Next Level team supports you. Let me know if you need anything." Andre felt a mix of emotions. He was touched by the support, but troubled by how quickly events had escalated. In his 20 years of building his company, he'd worked hard to be known for his innovations rather than his identity. Yet here he was, thrust into a spotlight he hadn't sought. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our final approach to Chicago. Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Thomas reappeared at Andre's side. "The captain can see you now if you're willing," he said. "And Mr. Wilson? Corporate just informed me that the airline's CEO has asked to meet with you personally at the terminal." Andre nodded, unbuckling his seatbelt. As he stood to follow Thomas to the cockpit, he noticed several passengers giving him supportive nods and smiles. The woman who had been recording earlier gave him a thumbs up. In just 10 minutes, a momentary confrontation had snowballed into a situation that would affect dozens of lives and potentially change airline policies forever. And as Andre made his way to the front of the plane, he realized that the real challenge was just beginning. How he handled the next few hours would define not just the narrative around this incident, but potentially his legacy as a leader. The cockpit door closed behind Andre as he stepped inside. The captain, a gray-haired man with tired eyes and 4 stripes on his shoulders, turned from his instruments and extended his hand. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Captain Reynolds. I want to personally apologize for what happened back there. It's completely unacceptable." Andre shook his hand. "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate you taking the time during landing preparations." "This isn't just courtesy," Captain Reynolds said frankly. "The situation has escalated beyond the aircraft. Our headquarters is in crisis mode. The video has gone viral and our CEO is waiting at the gate." Andre raised his eyebrows. "That seems like an extreme response." The first officer, focused on the approaching runway, spoke without looking up. "Sir, your name is trending nationwide. People are calling for boycotts. The airline's stock dropped 4% in the last half hour." Captain Reynolds nodded grimly. "Corporate is worried this could become the next big social justice flashpoint. They're scrambling to get ahead of it." Andre took a deep breath. He'd built his career on thoughtful decision-making and measured responses. Now it seemed every move he made would be scrutinized under a harsh spotlight. "What happens to the flight attendant?" "Patricia?" he asked. "That's not entirely clear yet," Captain Reynolds replied. But between us, I'd be surprised if she's still employed by day's end. The whole crew might be in jeopardy, given how these things typically play out. Andre frowned. The whole crew? Most of them weren't even involved. Social media doesn't do nuance, Mr. Wilson, and airlines don't take chances with PR disasters. The plane descended through the clouds, the city of Chicago spreading out below them. Andre thanked the pilots and returned to his seat for landing, his mind racing. What had started as a personal slight now threatened to upend multiple lives. While he believed in accountability, the speed and severity of the response troubled him. As the plane taxied to the gate, Andre's phone exploded with notifications. His assistant had sent him links to news articles already published about the incident. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox were all covering it, each with their own spin. His company's public relations team had issued a statement, measured but supportive of Andre. The airline had released a brief comment saying they were investigating a reported incident and would take appropriate action. What caught Andre's attention most was a message from his teenage daughter. "Dad, you're all over TikTok. Are you really okay? Call me." The seatbelt sign dinged off. Passengers began standing and collecting their belongings, many stealing glances at Andre. Some offered supportive nods or whispered words of encouragement as they passed his seat. Others simply stared, recognizing him from the now viral video. Thomas approached one last time. "Mr. Wilson, we've arranged for you to deplane first. There's a representative waiting to escort you to a private lounge where you can meet with our CEO." Andre collected his belongings and followed Thomas toward the door. As he passed through business class, he caught sight of Patricia sitting alone in the crew area, her face pale and drawn. Their eyes met briefly. In that moment, he saw not the angry woman who had pushed him, but someone whose life was unraveling in real time. She quickly looked away. At the aircraft door, a woman in a crisp airline uniform greeted him. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Grace Liu, Regional Director of Customer Experience. On behalf of the airline, I want to express our deepest apologies for your experience today." Andre nodded politely as they walked up the jetway together. "I appreciate that, Ms. Liu. Our CEO is waiting in the Admiral's Club lounge. We've cleared a private section for your conversation." As they emerged into the terminal, Andre was startled to see several news crews positioned near the gate area. Someone shouted his name and cameras swung in his direction. "This way," Grace said urgently, guiding him through a side door and down a service corridor. "We anticipated media interest." "Media interest? It's been less than an hour," Andre said incredulously. 52 minutes to be exact, Grace replied. "The video has over 2 million views already. Your name is the #1 trending topic nationally." They reached the lounge where a tense group of executives in dark suits waited. A tall man with silver temples stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Richard Donovan, CEO of the airline. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us." Andre shook his hand. Seemed like the reasonable thing to do. Donovan gestured toward a private conference room. "Please." Inside, they were joined by the airline's chief legal counsel and head of public relations. The gravity of the situation was evident in their expressions. "Mr. Wilson," Donovan began once they were seated, "I've reviewed the video footage from multiple passengers, as well as the preliminary report from our lead flight attendant. What happened was inexcusable and we take full responsibility." "I appreciate that," Andre said, "but I'm concerned about the speed at which this is unfolding. I haven't even had time to process it fully myself." The PR director, a woman with sharp features and quick eyes, leaned forward. "Mr. Wilson, we're facing a potential catastrophe. Your prominence in the tech industry, combined with the clear racial component of the incident, has created a perfect storm. We need to take decisive action immediately." "What kind of action?" Andre asked. Donovan exchanged glances with his team before responding. "We've already placed Patricia Reynolds on administrative leave. But given the severity of the incident and the public reaction, we're preparing to terminate her employment, effective immediately." Andre nodded slowly. "That wasn't unexpected." "Additionally," Donovan continued, "we believe it's necessary to replace the entire flight crew that was on duty." "The entire crew?" Andre asked, echoing his earlier conversation with the captain. "Most of them had nothing to do with what happened." The legal counsel cleared his throat. "Our investigation shows that while the other crew members didn't participate in the discriminatory behavior, they failed to intervene promptly. In the current climate, that's a liability we can't afford. Andre felt a weight settling on his shoulders. He had come to Chicago to talk about cybersecurity innovations. How people's livelihoods hung in the balance based on how he responded in this room. "What are you asking of me?" he asked directly. "Ideally," the PR director said, "a joint statement. You standing beside Mr. Donovan, accepting our apology and the actions we're taking. It would go a long way toward containing the damage." Andre considered this. "And if I don't feel comfortable with that approach?" The room grew noticeably tenser. "That's your prerogative, of course," Donovan said carefully. "But I hope you'll consider the opportunity we have here to turn a negative incident into a positive catalyst for change. We're prepared to announce a comprehensive review of our training protocols and diversity initiatives." Andre's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Raj, the marketing director he hadn't yet met in person. "I'm in the terminal. The rest of the flight crew is being escorted to HR. They look shell-shocked. Let me know if you need support." Another message followed immediately from his company's board chair. "CNN wants an interview. Your call, but could be a chance to control the narrative. Also, your conference keynote has been moved to the main stage. Attendance projected to double." Andre rubbed his temples. The incident was taking on a life of its own, growing far beyond what had actually happened on that plane. While he believed in holding people accountable for discriminatory behavior, he also believed in proportionality and fairness. "Mr. Donovan," he said finally, "I appreciate your quick response to this situation. I agree that what happened was unacceptable and requires action, but I'm not comfortable being the face of a mass firing, especially for crew members who weren't directly involved." Donovan's expression tightened. "I understand your hesitation, but—" Andre held up his hand. "Let me finish. What I would support is this: appropriate consequences for Patricia, coupled with a meaningful commitment to change. Not just diversity training, but structural changes in how you hire, promote, and handle incidents like this." The PR director was already typing notes on her tablet. "We can work with that. A task force, perhaps, with you as an advisor?" "No," Andre said firmly. "I don't want special treatment or a consulting fee. What I want is for you to work with experts who do this every day. People who understand the complexities of creating truly inclusive environments." The tension in the room eased slightly as Donovan nodded. "That's reasonable. We can announce immediate consequences for the individual directly involved, while committing to a more thoughtful, expert-led approach to systemic changes." Andre stood up. "Then we have an understanding. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conference to prepare for." As he gathered his belongings, the legal counsel slid a document across the table. "Mr. Wilson, this is a confidentiality agreement regarding our discussion today." Andre left it untouched. "I won't be signing that. Transparency is too important in situations like this." Outside the lounge, he found Raj waiting, looking both concerned and impressed. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Raj Patel, your new marketing director. I was on the flight." Andre smiled, recognizing the name from the messages. "Thank you for your support, Raj. I appreciate having someone from the team here." As they walked toward the exit, Andre's phone rang again. It was Diane from Communications. "Andre, how did the meeting go?" she asked. "About as well as could be expected," he replied. "They're firing Patricia and rethinking their approach to the rest of the crew. I pushed for more meaningful changes rather than just quick action for PR purposes." "That sounds like you," Diane said approvingly. "Listen, there's something else you should know. The story has evolved beyond just what happened on the plane. People are talking about how you've handled it, with dignity and restraint. You're becoming a symbol for a different kind of leadership." Andre sighed. "I never asked to be a symbol. I just wanted a pillow so I could take a nap." "I know," Diane said gently. "But sometimes we don't choose our moments. Sometimes they choose us." As Andre and Raj stepped outside to their waiting car, a small group of reporters called out questions. Andre paused, considering whether to stop and speak. The events of the past hour had thrust him into a spotlight he hadn't sought. But now that he was here, perhaps there was something meaningful he could do with it. What had started with a flight attendant's momentary lapse in judgment had cascaded into consequences that would affect an entire company. And somehow Andre now found himself at the center of a conversation much larger than one unpleasant encounter on an airplane. The conference center buzzed with energy as attendees filed into the main hall. What had been scheduled as a standard industry keynote had transformed into the most anticipated event of the day. News of the incident had spread throughout the tech community, and everyone wanted to hear directly from Andre Wilson. Andre stood backstage, reviewing his notes one last time. His original presentation about next-level security innovations remained largely intact, but he'd added a brief acknowledgement of the morning's events. He had no intention of letting the incident overshadow the work his team had spent months preparing. 5 minutes, Mr. Wilson, a staff member called. Raj approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, offering one to Andre. The hall is at capacity. They've opened an overflow room with video feed. Andre accepted the coffee gratefully. How's the team handling all this? They're concerned for you, but also proud. Your response is being held up as a masterclass in crisis management. The board is thrilled with how you've represented the company. Andre smiled wryly. Funny how navigating a PR crisis wasn't in the conference agenda. His phone buzzed with a news alert. He glanced down to see a breaking news headline. Airline announces termination of flight attendant involved in viral incident. Launches comprehensive review of practices. That was fast, Andre murmured. Raj nodded. They're in damage control mode. Social media is still on fire. Andre's communications director, Diane, joined them. Just got word that Patricia has released a statement through her union representative. She's apologizing for her actions and asking for understanding, citing personal struggles. And the rest of the crew? Andre asked. Still in limbo, Diane replied. The airline is conducting interviews with each of them before making final decisions. Andre frowned. The speed of modern judgment troubled him. In less than 3 hours, a woman's career had ended and others hung in the balance. While he didn't excuse Patricia's behavior, the swiftness of the consequences felt almost dizzying. 2 minutes, the staff member called. Andre handed his coffee back to Raj. I need to make a call before I go. On. He stepped away from the backstage bustle, dialing the number for Richard Donovan, the airline CEO. Mr. Wilson, Donovan answered immediately. I was about to call you. We've just announced Patricia's termination and our comprehensive review. I saw, Andre replied. But I'm calling about the rest of the crew. We're still evaluating. I'd like you to consider something, Andre interrupted. This incident happened because someone made a snap judgment based on limited information. I'd hate to see the airline make the same mistake in its response. There was a pause on the line. What are you suggesting? A more measured approach. Evaluate each crew member based on their actions, not just their proximity to the incident, and consider whether termination is truly the only option for Patricia. Perhaps there's an opportunity for education and growth here. Mr. Wilson, with all due respect, the public is demanding action. The public will respect thoughtfulness as much as speed, Andre countered. I'm about to speak to a room full of industry leaders. I'd prefer to commend your company for its wisdom rather than its reactivity. Another pause. I'll take your perspective under advisement. Thank you, Andre said. That's all I'm asking. As he ended the call, the stage manager signaled it was time. Andre took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate and thunderous. People rose to their feet, many holding phones to capture the moment. Andre raised a hand in modest acknowledgement and waited for the room to settle. Thank you, he began once the applause subsided. I appreciate your warm welcome, though I suspect it has less to do with next levels, innovations and more to do with a video some of you might have seen today. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. For those who haven't, been glued to social media for the past 3 hours. Andre continued with a small smile. Let's just say my flight to Chicago was more eventful than anticipated, but I'm not here to talk about that incident. I'm here to talk about the future of cybersecurity. He paused, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. However, before I do, I want to address something. In today's world of instant uploads and viral moments, it's easy to forget that behind every trending hashtag are real people with real lives. What happened on that plane wasn't acceptable, but neither is the rush to judgment that often follows these incidents. The room grew quieter, the audience leaning forward slightly. At Next Level, we've built our company on the belief that technology should bring out the best in humanity, not amplify our worst impulses. The same principles that guide our approach to security, thoughtfulness, context, proportionality, should guide how we respond to human error as well. Andre noticed several attendees nodding in agreement. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to shift our focus to what I actually came here to discuss: how we're revolutionizing data protection in an age of unprecedented vulnerability. With that, Andre launched into his prepared presentation, the incident temporarily set aside as he detailed Next Level's groundbreaking approach to cybersecurity. For the next 40 minutes, he was simply a CEO sharing his company's vision, not the central figure in a viral controversy. As Andre concluded his presentation to enthusiastic applause, his phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Diane. Airline CEO just announced a revised approach. Patricia suspended pending further review. Rest of crew cleared to return to duty after additional training. They're citing your call for measured response as the reason. A wave of relief washed over Andre as he fielded questions from the audience. His brief intervention had at least created space for a more thoughtful approach. After the presentation, Andre found himself surrounded by conference attendees, many expressing support for how he'd handled the situation. A few shared their own experiences with discrimination, thanking him for bringing attention to an issue that affected so many travelers. As the crowd thinned, a woman approached hesitantly. She wore a conference badge identifying her as Dr. Helena Wu, Director of Diversity and Inclusion at a major tech corporation. "Mr. Wilson," she said, extending her hand. "Your keynote was excellent, but I was particularly struck by your comments regarding the incident." Andre shook her hand. "Thank you, Dr. Wu. I've been working in this field for 15 years, she continued. And one of our biggest challenges is finding ways to hold people accountable without destroying them in the process. The way you've navigated this situation could serve as a valuable case study." Andre considered this. "I'm just trying to find the right balance." "That balance is exactly what we need more of," Dr. Wu replied. "I'm speaking tomorrow on building equitable tech workplaces. Would you consider joining the panel? I think your perspective would add tremendous value." Before Andre could respond, Raj appeared at his side with an urgent expression. "Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing." Andre excused himself from Dr. Wu, promising to consider her invitation, and followed Raj to a quiet corner. "What's happening?" he asked. Raj handed him his tablet. On the screen was a social media post from a passenger identified as Lily Chen. "Update on the flight attendant situation. Just learned Patricia Reynolds has been a single mother raising a child with special needs. She's been with the airline for 12 years with no prior incidents. One mistake shouldn't erase a lifetime of service. Veer context matters." The post had already gained significant traction with thousands of shares and comments. The narrative was beginning to shift. "It gets more complicated," Raj continued. "Patricia's colleagues have started a support campaign. They're acknowledging she was wrong but arguing the punishment is disproportionate. They've shared stories of her mentoring younger flight attendants of color and advocating for more inclusive airline policies." Andre ran a hand over his face. The black and white story of villain and victim was blurring into shades of gray, as real stories usually did when you looked closer. "There's more," Raj said, scrolling to another news item. "The flight attendants union is getting involved. They're calling for a review of the airline's disciplinary procedures, claiming the company acted hastily to appease public pressure rather than following established protocols." Andre's phone rang. It was Richard Donovan again. "Mr. Wilson," the airline CEO said when Andre answered. "It seems the situation continues to evolve." "I'm seeing that," Andre replied. "Your call earlier gave us pause. We've been discussing a different approach, one that acknowledges the seriousness of the incident while allowing for rehabilitation rather than just punishment." Andre found himself nodding. "I think that's wise. We'd like to propose a joint initiative," Donovan continued. "Rather than just firing Patricia and moving on, we're considering a more comprehensive response. Anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, a review of our hiring and promotion practices, and a pathway for Patricia to potentially return to service after completing specific requirements." "That sounds promising," Andre said. "We'd like your input on the framework," Donovan added. "Not as a consultant, as you made clear earlier, but as someone whose perspective we value." As the conversation continued, Andre realized that what had started as a distressing personal experience was transforming into something potentially meaningful. The incident had created an opening for changes that might benefit countless travelers and airline employees in the future. Later that evening, as Andre sat in his hotel room reviewing emails, he received a message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Thank you for your grace." The message was from Patricia Reynolds. "Mr. Wilson," it began, "I have no right to contact you after my inexcusable behavior today. My actions were wrong, and no explanation can justify them. I've spent my career trying to treat everyone with respect, and in a moment of personal stress, I failed that commitment terribly. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your call for a measured response has given me a chance to learn from this mistake, rather than just be defined by it. I will be using this time to reflect deeply on my actions and biases. The person you saw on that plane today is not who I strive to be. Thank you for seeing the possibility of change, even when I gave you every reason not to." Andre read the message twice. Then he began to type a response, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges as the story continued to unfold. But for now, in this quiet moment, he felt a sense of cautious hope that something constructive might emerge from what had begun as a painful encounter at 30,000 feet. 6 months had passed since that fateful flight to Chicago. Andre Wilson stood at the window of his corner office, watching the late afternoon sun glint off neighboring buildings in the tech district. On his desk sat the morning's newspaper, featuring a business section article about Next Level's latest security platform. The product launch had been a tremendous success, overshadowing the incident that had briefly made Andre a household name. His assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Your 3 o'clock is here," she said. Andre turned from the window. "Thank you, Vivian. Send them in." The door opened again and 3 people entered. Richard Donovan, the airline CEO, Dr. Helena Wu, who had become a valuable advisor to the airline, and Patricia Reynolds. Andre moved forward to greet them, shaking hands with each. When he reached Patricia, there was a brief moment of recognition, a shared acknowledgement of how far they'd come since that turbulent encounter. "Please, have a seat," Andre said, gesturing toward the conference table by the window. "How was your flight?" "Much smoother than the last time we shared an aircraft," Richard said with a cautious smile. The tension broken, they settled around the table. Vivian brought in coffee and left them to their meeting. "I want to thank you all for coming," Andre began. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have imagined us sitting here together like this. "Life takes unexpected turns," Dr. Wu observed. "Sometimes for the better, even when it doesn't seem that way at first." Richard opened his briefcase and removed a folder. "We wanted to share the results of our initiatives with you in person. Mr. Wilson, your influence on our approach has been significant, even though you declined formal involvement." He slid several documents across the table. "Our comprehensive anti-bias training has now been completed by over 87% of our customer-facing staff. Employee feedback has been remarkably positive, not the usual response to corporate training programs." Andre glanced through the reports. "These numbers are impressive. The key difference," Dr. Wu explained, "was our approach. Rather than treating it as a punitive response to a PR crisis, we framed it as professional development that benefits everyone, passengers and employees alike. We used real scenarios, including anonymous versions of incidents like yours, to make the training relevant." Patricia, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The program changed my perspective in ways I never expected. It wasn't about making me feel guilty. It was about helping me see things I'd been blind to before." Andre studied her thoughtfully. The woman before him seemed different from the angry flight attendant who had pushed him 6 months ago. There was a calmness to her now, a reflective quality. "Patricia has been instrumental in refining the program," Richard added. "After completing her own requirements, she volunteered to help develop the curriculum further." "It was the least I could do," Patricia said, meeting Andre's gaze directly. "What happened that day, my behavior was inexcusable. But being given the chance to make something constructive from it has been life-changing." Andre nodded. "I'm glad to hear that." Richard continued through the documents. "We've also implemented the hiring and promotion reviews we discussed. The data revealed disparities we hadn't previously recognized. We're already seeing improvements in our diversity metrics at all levels." "What about passenger complaints?" Andre asked. "Any measurable changes there?" "Down 23% overall," Richard replied. Complaints specifically mentioning discriminatory treatment are down 35%. We still have work to do, but the trend is encouraging. As they continued reviewing the results, Andre reflected on how differently the situation might have played out. The initial social media outrage had demanded immediate termination for Patricia and the entire crew. The airline had been poised to comply, prioritizing swift action over meaningful change. His intervention had created space for a more thoughtful approach. "There's something else we wanted to discuss," Richard said, closing the folder. "We're planning to expand these initiatives industry-wide. Several other airlines have expressed interest in adopting similar programs. We'd like to host a forum next month, bringing together key stakeholders to share what we've learned." "Sounds promising," Andre said. "We'd like you to be the keynote speaker," Dr. Wu added. "Your perspective as the catalyst for these changes would be invaluable." Andre hesitated. He had intentionally stepped back from the public spotlight after the incident, focusing on his company, rather than becoming the face of yet another social movement. "I appreciate the invitation," he said carefully, "but I'm not sure I'm the right voice for this." "With respect, Mr. Wilson," Patricia said, "you are exactly the right voice. You could have demanded my firing and walked away. Instead, you advocated for a response that recognized my humanity while still holding me accountable. That balance is what's missing from so many of these conversations." Andre considered her words. "Let me think about it." Richard nodded in understanding. "Of course. No pressure." As the meeting wrapped up, Patricia lingered behind while Richard and Dr. Wu stepped out to take calls. "Mr. Wilson," she began, "there's something I've wanted to tell you. Beyond the formal apologies and corporate statements." Andre gestured for her to continue. "The day of our flight, I was at my breaking point," she said. "My son had been hospitalized the week before. My mother, who helps with his care, had just been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. I was fighting with the airline about medical leave and had barely slept in days." She took a deep breath. "None of that excuses how I treated you. But when you intervened with the airline, you weren't just saving my job. You were saving my family's stability, our health insurance, our home. You did that without even knowing our circumstances." Andre hadn't known these details. The human story behind the viral moment had been reduced to simplified headlines and social media outrage. "Thank you for telling me this," he said. Patricia reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "My son drew this for you. He's 12 and has autism. When he found out I was meeting you today, he insisted I bring it." Andre opened the envelope to find a carefully drawn picture of an airplane with the words "Thank you" written in colorful letters above. "He knows that something happened that almost cost Mommy her job, and that you helped make things better," Patricia explained. "In his world, that makes you a superhero." Andre looked at the drawing, feeling the weight of its simplicity. "Please thank him for me. Tell him it's going on my office wall." After Patricia left to rejoin the others, Andre returned to the window, the child's drawing still in his hand. The incident that had gone viral 6 months ago had been viewed by millions, each person forming their own opinion based on a few seconds of video. But the real story, the human complexity behind those seconds, had unfolded over months, out of the public eye. His phone buzzed with a message from Raj. "Board meeting in 30. The airline partnership proposal is on the agenda." "How did the meeting go?" Andre typed back. "Better than expected. Let's discuss before the board meeting." The partnership had been Raj's idea, leveraging next-level security expertise to help the airline protect its systems, while incorporating elements of their anti-bias training into Next Level's corporate culture. What had begun as an unfortunate encounter had evolved into an unexpected collaboration. Andre picked up the newspaper from his desk, glancing again at the headline about Next Level's latest innovation. The article made no mention of the viral incident that had briefly defined him 6 months ago. That chapter was closing. His assistant appeared at the door. "Richard and the others are ready whenever you are, and the board members are gathering in the main conference room." "Thank you, Vivian. Tell them I'll be right there."